Wasn't started.
Yeah, we're live now. 5, 4, 3, 2, -5. Hello, world. BetaCodex live. Rijon, Erickson and Niels Pflaeging. Nothing on the bottom indicating who we are, but going into this deep place of, oh my God, the existential anxiety, neurotic anxiety, chosen accountability, vitality of death book.
In a way, yes. In a way, we go back to books, right? Because our first episode, not sure if you will remember, Rijon, episode number 60. Our first episode was about the book 2. Remember that? Another Peter.
Yeah. Oh, damn it. I got it. What would Drucker do?
Yes. What would Drucker do? So about a book about Peter Drucker. And now we are returning to a book and returning to 2 Peters at once. Peter Block and Peter Koestenbaum, a German and an American, by the way.
Oh, I didn't know he was German. I mean, I know the name's German, of course.
He was born in Germany, his family lived in Berlin, apparently, when the Nazis took over, and they emigrated to the United States. Of course, he probably became American. I don't know the details, but he was a German-American. Yeah. So Peter Koestenbaum.
May he rest in peace.
Yes, he just passed away. We're recording this in early February 2025, and he passed away on the 5th of December 2024, aged 97.
Oh my!
Which is a good age, I would say. Yes, it's a decent age.
Yeah, for sure.
However, isn't it interesting? Somebody passed away. Peter Koestenbaum. He wrote 2 interesting books about the topic of dying and death.
Yeah.
Right? Do you remember the name? I have one of the books, The Vitality of Death. I think that one I have.
Well, I'm using this
years. So interesting man, Peter Koestenbaum. This is the book. Yeah. It's called Confronting Our Freedom.
Yes. And
we have to talk about our history and the history of the book, Rijon.
Yeah. For some reason your video is a little choppy, but when this it's coming back now. It's going to record locally. It will do it later. Blah 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 blah. Okay. So history with the book. We've never talked about it. You and I have talked about it. I mean, you recommended it, said it was awesome like a year or so ago. So I'm really curious what your experience was, how you came to it, and that. If you want to go first.
How I came to the book? Yeah, I recommended it to you, and of course you hesitated to buy it, right? Then I pushed you a little bit farther.
Yeah.
At the time, I think when I read the first pages, I was so enthused that I immediately told a few people about it, you among others, Rijon, and I also immediately put it on the, even before, I think before I had finished it, I already put it on the recommended books list on the BetaCodex network website as well.
Oh yeah.
Right? So it is, in my personal opinion, one of the 100 most important books, maybe one of the 10 most important books that you should read if you're interested in self-organization, decentralization, organizational democracy. It is a book that was published. I do not remember how I found out about it, actually. I can only guess that maybe there was a bit of chance involved. Here's the thing, the book, I had one of the books by this author about consulting from the 1990s or the 2000s, from the 2007.
The Flawless Consulting book, the Peter Block book, or the Koestenbaum book?
Book, which I didn't like at the time, and I still do not like it. This is the one I recommend. By the way, in this book, Confronting Our Freedom, it's based on a previous book, 20 years before this one was published, also by Peter Block and Peter Koestenbaum. It was called Freedom and Accountability at Work. Now, here's my urgent. I bought this one as well. And as you can see, the new version here is, if you can see it, maybe I was just listening to this, but if you can see what I'm holding up, the new book is much thinner than the old book. Still, I think it has much the same content, the same amount of content. It's much better edited. So I can only recommend you to get the new book, Confronting Our Freedom, the new version, let's say, which was written in or shortly after, or edited in or shortly after the COVID crisis. So COVID appears a couple of times in the book, right? Actually, very frequently in the book. Yes. So this is an
Oh, yeah.
update of an earlier book by the same authors. And I think what's interesting and important to understand is that Peter Koestenbaum probably wasn't involved very much in writing it.
No, not at
Right?
all.
Same impression?
Right.
Not at all.
Yeah. Oh,
I
same
think,
impression. I don't think he speaks through the quotes that Peter Block puts in the book.
exactly. And that's much better done, more well done in the new edition. There are quotes, longer quotes also by Peter Koestenbaum, and then they're kind of deciphered, explained, placed in context by Peter Block beautifully. And I think mainly, maybe Peter Block is listening to this. I think this is a coming of age book of Peter Block, basically. I hope not to be. This is meant as an homage, of course. Peter Block is 70 years old or something, at least.
I think he's a bit.
So coming of age, of course.
I'm here in town. I'm here in Cincinnati, and I would love to. I wanted you to watch this. I'll share it with you.
I'm not sure how young or old Peter Block is, but and it doesn't matter. Of course, he's a wonderfully matured writer that shines through in this book. Peter Block published other brilliant books that I love. Community, how is the one about community?
Community, Structure of Belonging, Flawless Consulting.
Which I dislike, but the Communities book is wonderful. And the Stewardship book is also wonderful from the 1990s, which I think is brilliant and changed my life, really. So Peter Block, himself a great author, took it, and he has a long-term relationship. All that is well explained in this book. They have a 40 years relationship or something, Peter Block and Peter Koestenbaum, or they had it. And Peter Block kind of, it's clear how much he figured out these concepts and how well he's able to connect the philosophical with the practical. And of course, this is a book about practice as well. He talks critically of the drive to over-accentuate practice. We might talk about that in a minute. So I think this is a fabulous book, beautifully edited by Peter Block, using these quotes and the philosophy of Peter Koestenbaum, which is existentialist, but not the Sartre way, not the trivial way, but that you might be afraid of. I think it's a very contemporary, very Viktor Frankl-like book. I'm not quite sure which school of philosophy Peter Koestenbaum would have counted himself in, but I would say it's a constructivist, humanistic, modern philosophy that speaks well to everyone. And it's really much a book about work.
Oh yeah.
So I think this is, and it dares to be political at times. It is social. It's like philosophy applied to the social sciences, I would say, and it's very well written. Here's the thing: we might also talk about critique about this book. You will soon. You can talk yourself a little bit.
You've got a good riff going here, so please.
I think this is a book full of flaws as well. Interestingly, I didn't like this. I do not like the structure very much. I think it's redundant at times, which is, or you might call it didactic. Yeah. So there are kind of repetitions, themes, and topics that appear over and over again. I think it's a book that you can read 10 times in your life. I just read it the second or the third time today.
Yeah,
most of it, because of course I made plenty of, I did plenty of markings. So now when I read it, I'm a little bit faster than the first times.
I mean, you can't go like 2 pages without, like
exactly.
The second time I read,
amazing quotes, right, Ryan? It's unbearably tight on quotes. Good stuff, and it's mostly the Peter Block stuff. I think it's very fresh. It's kind of kinky. It's interesting. It's challenging. It's counterintuitive. It is practically and philosophical in 1 or 2 sentences. It's just fantastic. So this, I think, is one of the best business books of all times in my mind. It has plenty of flaws, I think, but that makes it even better, maybe, because it probably means that I can come back to this book over and over again and find out why I misjudged it right today. So amazing book, a must-read book. We will talk about the details in a moment. Now, Ryan, it's your turn.
So absolutely, 100% everything you say. Even the critique, I understand what you're saying, because it's almost like Peter Block puts his thought there and brings the quote in specifically where it's like repeating the same thing, then he repeats it again. But I think for me, as my attention span, as you well know, is like that of a goldfish, it just goes away. But it really it intensifies and kind of builds on this concept that here's what I mean by anxiety. This is what, and anxiety, and I said in one of my posts recently, anxiety, not what you think it is, not this kind of generalized, this only pathological treatment. It's like this, there's this, I am here, I am alive, and that, what do I do? What are you going to do with your life? And I almost thought, like, for this whole book, he's saying, Ryan, what are you going to do with your life?
It's interesting that you highlight this. Yeah, great. Yes.
Yeah, well, with this, and the whole thing, and even just the title, but Confronting Our Freedom. Okay, so
Brilliant.
what would you, and free, what do you mean by, and this, the whole concept of freedom, the cost of freedom. And, anxiety is the cost of freedom. So you confront your freedom. It's like, oh crap, I have all this stuff, and like, what am I going to do? That's the anxiety he's talking about. It's not like it's not like, Niels, you're judging me, or whomever is judging me, and all this kind of stuff that I have to worry, being anxious about what you might think of me. No. We're talking about this anxiety of what it is to be human. Right. And that also goes into this vitality of death thing. It's like, oh, I'm human. That means this thing that's happening is going to end someday. So if you don't confront the fact that, life is going to end, and that stuff's just going to happen, and don't say, I'm accountable for this. I'm facing my freedom, confronting it, showing I'm accountable for this, taking responsibility, and that the guilt of not doing it, right? And so the one word, and there's like, probably, you just go through each word, and you can like have 50 pages on how you take each position he takes on, what do we talk, when is this existential thing, when do you face that, what does that mean, and the idea of talking about stuff that you can't talk about, which is something I really love. It's like this topic of evil. It's when do you hear but talking about evil at work, talking about death at work, talking about talking about anxiety, talking about guilt at work, when those are really the things that we talk at this abstract level about fear, about what are people afraid of, and well, I'm afraid of being judged. That's this neurotic guilt. I'm afraid of that, and also in the whole guilt of being, I'm not accepting that I am accountable for my choices. I am running away from this beautiful, amazing, and yet terrifying experience of life, and that I am denying myself the possibility to be of value in the world. And that, this is just all the individual stuff about, reading this from the me perspective. And then this idea of, okay, well, accountability, there's a whole, I don't know how this came up, as the universe is telling me this, that there's this discussion about, oh, Scrum Master is accountable for this. Developer team is accountable for that. No, oh, you shouldn't be accountable for this. And it's all this blah, 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 blah. And the assumption is that someone else is holding you accountable for something, right?
Yes.
And then that's not chosen accountability. That's imposed accountability, right? So you don't often realize, oh, I'm playing this organizational game, and that means I'm opting into someone else telling me what I'm accountable for, right? And that's alpha to the core. That is alpha to the core. And the beta piece is that I am choosing to be accountable for myself, and this is shared responsibility, shared accountability. And what does that mean? To confront my own accountability, and to confront you confronting your own. And that this is, to me, again, totally, you don't have to agree. Like, we don't always have to agree here, but this is part of the belonging bit that kind of gets short shrift. Maybe that would be my criticism, that says belonging on the front of the book, and it doesn't really go that deep into belonging. But
Yes. It's
Yeah.
not much themes that you will find in the book. I think this is a book about the individual and the freedom perspective of individual lives that you just described. And then he jumps to organizations and society. So there's not much about, I think, at least we might have a deeper discussion about, so at least I couldn't find much about teams, I think. So it's really about the individual in life, in society, in organizations, but he gets very specific on organizations too, right? Which is a beautiful aspect of the book. And there's a whole chapter on organizing at the end, but really he goes into organization and alpha and beta, as we call it, the distinction between command and control, which he calls command and control in the book as well, and beta, which he calls a more freedom acknowledging organizing.
The fully human organization.
Yeah, yes, he calls it the fully human. So this is a book, fantastic that you already outlined the philosophical part or the conceptual part a little bit, the key concepts. I think it's like freedom is a given and you cannot escape it. That's the key message or the key existential insight that Koestenbaum and Bloch base every argument on. Freedom is an inescapable fact. All our acts are free, whether we like it or acknowledge it or confront it or not. But there are two consequences of freedom. One is anxiety, the other is guilt.
Yeah.
So, and we might say, these are emotions, but they are, for Koestenbaum, they are philosophical, human, they are natural collaterals of inescapable human freedom. So anxiety of living, we're not talking about the neurotic anxiety here, but about the, substantial anxiety of, enduring failure, the anxiety of not knowing often what's right or wrong. There are no simple answers. And then the guilt that you could have done things, you could do things, but you're not always doing them in spite of your freedom. You're not choosing all the options available. And so inevitably, we have to confront anxiety and guilt as well. If we try to escape or reduce them, we are doomed and fucked, which is not the book. And then... No, I think it doesn't appear, right? And then death and evil...
No, the fact that we're fucked doesn't appear. So
no, it doesn't appear. But it's implicit. It's implicit.
It's implicit. And I think that one of the... And we talked about this in our pre-session connection, is that this can be seen as a really depressing book, right? It can be like a real downer of
I think it's hugely liberating. Right, of course. Officially talking, there's a whole chapter about speaking of death and evil, which sounds a book. Oh, this is a book about Trump.
I knew it was going to go there. I knew it was going to go there.
Who, by the way,
I didn't confront my freedom.
Who, by the way, it might be a book about Hitler, who paraded along Mr. Koestenbaum when he was 7 years old at some point in Berlin. So this is very. You'd already mentioned both of these elements, which are things. Koestenbaum and Bloch argue that death is needed to convey meaning and purpose to lives. Without death, no meaning. There's a beautiful TV show, a science fiction show about that. Beautiful, I'm not sure, but humans have overcome death and live forever, or can live forever. And that means that everything...
nothing has any meaning.
It becomes fascist. Yeah, and nothing means anything. So I forgot the title of the show, but it's on Amazon, I think. And evil, and I think I love the part on evil, that we have to name evil. We have to name evil. There's a lot here about language as well, that we have to identify.
Words make worlds. He actually says it in that.
Yes.
I think is one of the first chapters.
It's incredibly beautiful, profound, and practical book. I think it's hugely practical.
So that was one thing that when you said that in commentary on some of the posts, I think one today said, "Oh, let's get this is so practical." I'm like, I mean, I feel that's practical in terms of applying it to your own life and your own principles of how you navigate life.
Yes,
and acknowledging that. I'm wondering if that was what you were referring to. I would really like to know, from your perspective, what the
No, I
practicality
also
of
meant
this confrontation is.
organizations. Great that you're asking. I also mean like pages 42 and the followings. He derives, there are several chapters in which Block goes into what are the implications. And this chapter that starts on 42 is implications, forms of freedom. And he goes into, okay, what are the consequences of adopting a beta model? And he gets very practical, abolish employee surveys, abolish appraisal, abolish bonuses and fixed targets and so on. It's all here. It's written out.
It's like he read the BetaCodex principles and wrote the book for that. But I want to read the sub chapters of that.
I had a totally different. I thought, oh my God, why did I fail to say it this way? Why did I never say it this way? That's what I thought, because I thought it in a million other ways, I think. But
the thing is,
it's
I think
beautiful.
why,
It comes to
why
the
there's
same
universality
from
of
the
it.
point of freedom. So
it's the universality of it. Like you said, the forms of freedom, right? Employees do not need to be motivated, right? So this is about the intrinsic motivation. The second, rewards do not explain and drive behavior. This is what we're talking about.
Exactly.
The organization does not have to develop its employees, like implying there's ownership of an employee there. I mean, those are just those three segments there.
Ownership, bonuses, golden handcuffs. There are all kinds. Forget pay for performance. Forget merit. It's all explained here, by the way. I'm just dropping the words, that are also appearing in the book. So it's very specific. There's a whole thing about learning that sounds like Pharmacomainia's brochure, so to speak. And there's a lot about relative targets in here. Beautiful. He says something. I should quote it maybe directly.
We got.
If we continue to decide what people should learn and how they should learn it, we will forever have to convince them that learning is good for them. We will continue to sell them on learning, mandate or nominate their attendance, and they in turn will act as if learning is an entitlement instead of a privilege. When participants enter the room of a learning event, seminar and stuff, knowing full well that they chose to be there, the social contract of their learning has shifted dramatically. It is no longer up to the instructors to prove their value and relevance. It is clear from moment one that the learners are responsible for what value they receive. This is very substantial insight about how to, not fuck up learning. That seminars cannot work. That trainings are from hell, are hellbound, and that they are evil. And it's also a cool argument for open space, of course, right? And obviously, this could be from the open space website, right?
He talks about opening space for learning in here. I mean, it's self-organization.
Yes.
I mean, not like capital O space, not open space technology, but necessarily, but it's invitation, because invitation is a big part of community. It's a big part of the 6 conversation that Peter Block has. There were a couple other really heavy things that hit me. That I didn't even talk about this in any of my posts. I forgot I did. And he said, management, and that there's this fallacy that management and culture are cause and employees are effect. And it's like, okay, tell me more. And it said management and culture are subjects and employees are objects, right? So this is all about the separation of management and workers and organizational workers.
Yes.
And then it really hit me in this.
Which page is that? Can you repeat?
This is on page 14. Right? I mean, the first chat. This is just the introduction. Like I have yellow all over the introduction, and this is parents are cause and children are effect, and that's so this is this paternalist idea of management, and that this is the first time I really saw it and read it from someone else other than just you and I talking about it and saying about it, but that the idea of managerial authority is really a paternalist view, this parental, I take care of you, I'm your manager. And this, again, this other, I highlighted half the paragraph, the basic contract, it's a working contract, has been that the employee behaves well and they will be taken care of. You behave well and management will take care of you, or managers, whatever. So that hit me pretty hard. So I don't know if that came up for you in terms of having that done explicitly.
By the way, this is a tricky section of that paragraph. Management and culture are cause and employees are effect. I'm not sure if this is meant as a critique or as a description of quality.
It is. I wasn't explicit about that, but that was the critique. That the critique is that the thought was that managers are the cause, managers and employees are the effect. I mean, managers are.
Oh yeah, okay.
So that's what it's saying. But that really shouldn't be the case. It should be
like
that
manners maketh men, managers maketh employees. That's
yes.
critique, right? Yes. On the other hand, it's interesting. This is an interesting for me. It's an interesting thing that's being revealed here. Of course, this is not a book about systems theory, where we probably would have said things differently. But it's an interesting book. Well, it's all very, very interesting to take apart because it's full of critique and full of suggestions, which is surprising for a philosophy book, right?
Well, I mean, it's 165 pages, but yes. You can't really barrel through it and really get it. I mean, you could do that once just to kind of understand the structure, but then you got to go back in and really dive in. And again, I want to come back to this, the cause and effect bit, because I think it explains it better. He says that we have, and talking about the royal we, which I hate, but I kind of assume it goes into that. We, as in management and whatever in work culture, we have defined management as the cause of the workplace. And employees as the effect. And I think that was it is an instrumental transaction.
Yes,
that employees are the
instrumentalization of employees who are in fact free. Is one of the critiques. Yes, thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah. And so another thing I quote this now all the time.
Please do so.
And okay, so this is page 19 and. And here's the thing. Accountability cannot be imposed or demanded. It occurs as an inevitable outgrowth of that freedom, right? For we account for what we choose and we claim as our own agency in making things work. And here's what I was quoting. I can imagine that you wrote this part.
Of course I marked it. All of it.
People do not resist change. They resist coercion. And I say that every time, and because in the organizational change space, just as has been the language that, how do we combat resistance? How do we make the resistors see? Yes. How do we motivate them? How do we drive change? And I said, that is all bullshit. That is really all bullshit because people don't resist change. Oh no, people resist coercion. Being don't change me. I didn't. Why is this happening? It is a violation of human dignity. I would go far and say that. It's that I'm going to change you. I know I'm the parent. I am the cause. You are the effect. You are my instrument. I am changing you. And I call bullshit like that. That's coercion. That's the whole. I mean, if that was the only part of the book that you took away from reading it, then that would be enough. You give this to every person in the OD and change space. If you read that part, that'll flip your head around to think about it. So,
yes, but yeah. Oh, there are so many brilliant critiques. For example, there's a critique of this new, in a way, of the agile movement as well, right? Yeah. Did you find that on page 38?
I didn't see it called. I may have
all this novelty we have to do. In Germany, we have had a new work movement the last 10 years or so. And we had Industry 3.0 and all this kind of shit. All the new shit, shit that's new. The Spotify model, so new. Purpose, so new. Yes.
Well, and all this, and this again, I want to I'm going to do the page 38 thing, but
Yeah.
The Vitality of Death, which was like the source of all this stuff, it was written in 1971.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Written in 71. And the other book is like in 1978. It's like, this shit's been around
Yes.
for a long time.
Which is much better in this edition than the previous one as well. All these quotes from the 1971 and the 1978 book are highlighted, very neatly in this book. So you know exactly where the philosophy comes from, where the statement, the older Koestenbaum statement comes from. On page 38, this is the end of the middle paragraph. We often feel that if we want innovation or agility, we are better off starting from scratch, from the green field, than to try and change the system we already have. This is exactly the argument that we always talk about. You can flip the system, we have to work the system. We cannot, the idea that we can start something from scratch or bring in, implement, execute, establish, stuff from scratch in organizations is ludicrous. Organizational transformation isn't about new. It's about changing the system we already have, tweaking it, or not dabbling it or experimenting, but flipping it so that it becomes human.
Dare I say confronting it?
Confronting people's, confronting the system.
You're confronting the system.
With ourselves and others on the next.
On this, so here's a perfect example in the book. On the same page, and I looked at this whole page. Okay, there's 3 things on this page that I think they directly relate to what we've talked about here and was revolved.
I haven't seen it. We talk about driving change as if it were a car. Yes, beautiful. We cascade. It's the whole bullshit vocabulary thing that we always talk about, right?
And now go back to the first paragraph on that page 38, for those of you following along in the book that you've already bought now, since we've been talking about it. We hold the set of beliefs together by focusing on measurement with deep, abiding resolve. This is most clearly expressed in the statement: what does not get measured does not get done. Okay, all right. I'll get to it. We believe that if we cannot measure something, it does not exist. The corollary is that if we want to bring something into existence, it has to be defined in concrete, measurable terms. And here's the thing where I reminded of our talk. Most often, when faced with an innovative idea, we ask the question, where else has it worked? We're asking for
me that it works and so on. Yeah,
prove it. Prove it.
There's so many brilliantly witty critiques, so many, practical hints at changing the conversation. It's kind of mind-boggling for such a short book, and that even repeats itself at times, So this is the kind of book that you could turn into 180 quotes, brilliant quotes, certainly.
Oh yes,
they're beautiful things. Like why this is about relative targets, so to speak. What is the purpose of variable pay or profit sharing in a beta organization? He explains this very well. We continue support, reward, and influence people, but we do it out of our own sense of what is right and wrong. We do those things as an ethical stance or a philosophical stance rather than as a motivational strategy. We construct processes that are transparent and as fair as possible. High performers should definitely make more money, but we do not have to rank order people or stamp a number or letter grade on their forehead, which is interesting, which is a critique of command and control systems. As employees, the moment we accept our freedom, we stop treating leaders and managers as if they were so important, which is very interesting, right? Beautiful. As employees, the moment we accept our freedom, we stop treating leaders and management as if they were so important. One of the best sentences of the book, I think.
I think on that page too, I don't know if I got to the I got to the part of this. There's one, it was that managers don't know everything, right? And the fact that you don't have to, just because they have power over you doesn't mean they know what they're talking about. And I wish I had highlighted that. Sounds like it's near where you're talking about in the book. But anyway, I see the thing on rewards. Yeah, just
Yeah,
I even think
thing
if
about
you get the
self-structuring.
sample from Amazon, you probably get a lot of this too.
But here's a great thing about decentralization and self-structure design. The reward for structuring to support freedom is the accountability it produces. The accountability has its own psychology. No, physiology. Sorry. The accountability has its own physiology. Physiology. This includes existential guilt, which is guilt about unfulfilled potential, about self-betrayal, and anger at one's weakness. This is very much about self-structure design and decentralization. It's a physiological shift, so to speak. Decentralization is the physiology of accountability in action. Beautiful way of expressing this, right? The relationship between structure and freedom at work. It's wonderful. Of course, again, it's a very important point to make, I think. This is not a book where you will find stuff about teams. This is very much about the individual and life and work, right? And society. So
but it's implied. It's implied
because he talks about this social contract all the time, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that's changing the social contract between power over, power with, right? So it's implied all the time. You're totally right. I'm not sure how the term team appears here in the book.
I don't. It's
not the focus. Yeah?
Okay, so I realized that I didn't when I put forth the principles after the forms of freedom. I didn't get to one word that I that was one of my criticisms, and I was trying to get around it. But one principle is leadership. Leadership is abundant, not rare. Yes. So I think in beta language we would say there are leaderships abound. Yes. And take many forms, because each of us take many forms, and our choices and the way we confront and face our anxiety comes across in different ways. And if there are 2, 3, 4, 5 of us confronting our freedom together, choosing accountability together, and confronting each other in that, okay, what are we organizing here? Well, what's happening? And those are all leaderships. And that's the social density. I mean, you could go back to the social density. If you read this book and go to all 60 of our episodes so far, you almost have like a roadmap to it.
Yes.
So that word, leadership, singular, again, it's everywhere. You and I, that's we're not going to change the world by no one will ever say leader. Well, we'll say leaderships. We want that to happen. On the cover of the book, I'm wondering when you saw leading a culture, I wonder if that made you tingle a little bit when you saw that.
Yes, I think we have to keep in mind that it's usually not authors who pick the title, but publishers, and this is an obvious case. I think the main title, Confronting Our Freedom, is fantastic, brilliant, subtle but brilliant, and leading a culture of chosen accountability and belonging. Okay, yeah. There's lots of critique that could be uttered, but to no avail, right? Because we have to face that it's publishers who make the covers and the subtitles.
Well, and this also comes into the importance of language, and the words make worlds, and accepting that the language of your alpha organization it's to bring the language of beta there. There's a lot of work that needs to be done. There's this confrontation too, is that here's what it means to be free. And we are talking about freedom of people. And that what's been happening is this whole, I am a leader, I am leading, I am driving change. All that language is antithetical to individual free will and the choice of being together and having more control over what's happening in the organization. And this idea of, and this is another word that came through, he's not talking about organizations as much explicitly. He talks about organized effort. Right. And I don't know if you noticed that, but that was a very distinct thing. It's like, okay,
No, he
what
talks
is
about, he brings that into, there is a page toward the end where he puts that into context. I have one quote here that's related to that. He says here, organizations are a major playing field on which meaning is likely to be found. So that's the relation between individual meaning, and organizations offer the playing field in which we as individuals, as humans, can find meaning. The challenge is to engage in this pursuit collectively rather than individually. Yeah? Institutions are something more than collections of individual purposes. They force the question of what we want to create together, taking the focus off what I want to create individually. It's beautiful. Very, very, very succinct, very, to the point. Could it be phrased better? It's difficult, right?
It's again poetic. I think you could say that it's poetic and also philosophical. Again, we're drooling over the book here together, but
yes, why is this book so marvelous? I mean, we could back to the meta. You can quote more if you like, and we basically quoted a few things to make our listeners and viewers available of the quality of the prose, right? But the thing is that this book succeeds in connecting the philosophical and the practical, in a way, it's the best agile book ever published, it's one of the best beta books ever published, because it is so let's say direct in its approach of bridging the philosophical, the seemingly abstract, and the specific,
And I think this is, folks, there's a lot of noise and a lot of imprecision when talking about self-organization and human beings. And there's a lot of assumption about what that means. It doesn't mean no rules, it means laissez-faire. Does it mean, we just kind of be cool and free and we're not going to put any pressure on anything or anything? Well, not really. No. That's not what it's about. This is what it's about. If you read this, you'll realize what it means to self-organize, what it means when you go into an open space that's got juice to it, that we have passion, responsibility. We're going to create artifacts as a result of this. We're going to get some shit done. And that's the point.
This is not about the ideas of feeling better and Lego serious play. It's about getting freedom. Freedom as a serious as the serious building block of successful organizing, right?
Yeah, I mean it's like the field guide to self-organization, human self-organization. It's kind of like what that.
I hope that my organized complexity was that field guide, but okay, yes, let's say that the two can be read in combination.
This was an inspiration. Maybe I
think this is my point. This is way more than inspiration. I do not accept that we belittle this book or make it smaller than it is. I think this is way more than inspiring. I think, again, Peter Block is very explicit about what language or practices, what kind of stance, for example, values. He talks about a couple of times about values here, and that values are individual and cannot be prescribed, shall not be prescribed, because that means reducing liberty, freedom. By the way, liberty is a different word that he explains as well.
Yeah,
of course, book. So it's very, very practical of what to do, what not to do. It's really a perfect distinction. You could make a long list of alpha versus beta just from this book. You could derive the whole BetaCodex and the practicalities pretty much from the whole book. You would have to read it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm trying to find a very specific
practical treatise.
I'm trying to find a specific passage in here because it's related to a gap in my education of civics in general and management. And I, because I did not go to management school, music school, and really the ahas I've had now from becoming involved in the BetaCodex and all the books we've read together, is the idea of the enclosure movement in Great Britain, 500 years ago, right? I believe it's in this book. I was trying to find exactly where. Whatever it was, it was about and because this was something I tried to go into in public, and it's like people didn't understand what I was talking about. It was like either I was over their head or was out, but it was about the separation of authority, accountability, and responsibility. Because when in the days of sheep farming in Scotland in 1600s, 1700s, you had a sheep farmer, a sheep in the fields, and they were taking care of the community. They had collective good, the public good, that we are taking care of each other, and in these, again, small communities. And then as industrial, this is even pre-industrial, that there was at one point where the land was parceled, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that the crown decides to parcel the land and to give it to the gentry, these grants of land. And so that the crown has the authority, and the farmer then becomes the instrument, and the sheep. And then there's this managerial tier that has the accountability to the crown, and accountability that they hold the farmers accountable, right? So this idea of holding someone else accountable, it wasn't always there. There was this idea that at some point there was a schism of authority, responsibility, and accountability. And I think that has gone all the way through because of Taylorism and McNamara and all that kind of military industrial complex just kind of has flown through. And then when the world began to change into complexity around the 70s and complex markets, that we don't need to change. We've enclosed, and we have all our structures for holding accountability, demanding responsibility, and charging from authority that we've had for 500 years. And yet it seems as if now I'll make an assertion here about what we're proposing from a BetaCodex standpoint is that there is a need, because the planet has been destroyed in so many ways by the extractive nature of what industry has done, to come back to that sense of rebundling of authority, responsibility, and accountability in small groups, to say that, and we talk about mastery-based authority, right, and decision making that happens, that we are holding each other accountable to make decisions. Maybe we have someone that we elect and to do their research and consultative research, come back to us to make a decision together. Authority, we're all responsible for the work that we're doing as a cross-functional team, that we know what's happening. So that's a rebinding of that. And then you've got teams of teams that are creating structures of accountability, confronting their freedom as groups. I mean, it is all about a reimagining and a redesign of what it is to organize effort together, independent from a centralized control structure. We don't have to bend our knee to the ground anymore. And I wish I could find that chapter, because he explains a lot better. But that was an aha for me, and that was a way to bring some distinction and clarity to the conversation about what does it mean to be accountable, and are you choosing that accountability, or are you just shying away from your freedom?
With grave consequences.
Grave consequences.
Yeah, I cannot find the hint of Scotland and the kind of historical shift that you just talked about. Yeah, beautiful. Yes. Yeah, Confronting Our Freedom, in short, one of the most interesting business books of all time. That is not just a business book, of course, which spans philosophy, sociology, and organizational development. Beautifully written, very, very short. It's really something to read over and over. Really one of the books that I would say among the top 10, top 15 BetaCodex books, most certainly. And yes, beautiful writing.
Beautiful writing. There's if you, again, the way it was written, I was expecting to see actual current writing from Peter Koestenbaum in it, but there's nothing. Everything from Koestenbaum is a quote, and there's a section in the end of the book where it's an extended series of quotes from Koestenbaum.
Yes.
And really, the core of the book is taken from these two essays, The Vitality of Death and primarily The Vitality of Death.
Yes.
And
this is different from the previous edition. When today I picked up the previous edition again, which again is called Freedom and Accountability at Work. And there are none of these direct quotes or quotes, or very few of these direct quotes highlighted. There are some, not so many. So it's kind of, well, maybe there are, but they are not as visible. The new edition, again, this book, Confronting Our Freedom, is republished, a republished, improved version of an older book, right?
Condensation,
and editing is much, let me say, much richer. Yeah, I think it's really.
Yeah. Two more things I want to go into. There are two quotes that I think are one from the 71 book and one from the 78 book, which I sadly don't have the names of. The other thing was, I remember, it's not really on the website, the BetaCodex website now, but you mentioned it recently, freedom at work. You mentioned that the BetaCodex is about freedom at work.
Oh, I think that was on the website, I hope. Oh my goodness.
And where did that come from? Because this book wasn't out yet. I don't know if you've read Freedom. Well, you've got a copy of Freedom and Accountability, so maybe that's where it came from. But
no, I didn't have it. I only bought this recently as well. No, I think it might have come from getting this book, or maybe it was just an obvious thing. I think. Yeah, I know where it comes from. We thought of it comes from. With Comenius, I had this. We rebaptized, or we gave Comenius a tagline that's freedom and learning, and that made me think, okay, BetaCodex, it's really about freedom at work, so I put it there. I think it's on the website, on the homepage, yes. And then I found this book. Maybe I found it through this relationship, organizing freedom work, or then maybe then I researched Peter Block at a certain point. That might have been. Take me to the bridge.
Take me to the bridge, man. So going to the last verse of the tune, maybe here. We're heading. We'll go to the Montoon on the way out. Two quotes. One from Peter Koestenbaum in the 1978 book. Of course, should people not choose identification with the social structure, they also choose the consequences of that grave alienation. It's like, okay.
That's about America in 2025.
Yeah. And this actually comes in, and I'm looking here. This is we try and marry speed and innovation with the call to fail fast. This alienation from thought.
That's brilliant. A brilliant paragraph. I love that paragraph. Yes.
I mean, it's just this little sentence: alienation from thought.
Alienation from thought. Right.
It carries a cost. It forces us to keep repeating the way of thinking and acting that brought us here. COVID interrupted all of this. It might bring us into a new social contract with our workplaces. Not yet, but maybe.
It's very hopeful. Bitter ending so far, but not an ending, of course. So, yeah, ending. Of course, in 2025, you would also have to rewrite a few of these paragraphs.
It is always darkest before the dawn.
Ultimately, this is a book about optimism. Yeah, optimism of course. It's a book. This book reminded me, as a German, it reminded me very much of the work of Viktor Frankl. I'm not sure. Frankl, is he not well known? He wrote.
Yes, very, very well known.
An important book on meaning.
Man's search for meaning. Man's search for meaning.
Search of meaning, right? I'm not quite sure. I didn't look it up if Frankl is considered an existentialist as well, but it is certainly in the same line of thinking, reasoning. And this is kind of, it stuns us to read this kind of philosophy, and then but ultimately it's liberating. It's about confronting our freedom. Really, if we confront it, we have better options. Yeah.
I
Yes.
think
And the second quote?
there's a lot of liberation, and again, it was read the book, people.
Yes,
so another
of course.
another
We
quote.
want to
And so
stimulate everybody to read the book for themselves, not to believe.
Please.
Do not believe an ounce of what we are saying about the book. Read it.
we're just two talking heads here.
Exactly.
The next quote again is, I believe it is from Vitality of Death, and fundamental to existentialist theory is the view that the world as it appears to us is our own creation. This is constructivist.
That's constructivist, right? Yes.
And we must assume responsibility for it. Fundamental. And I'm looking at the quote. Oh, he repeats that quote 3 times right here.
Really?
It's like a
didn't
mantra.
Notice that. In the book, there's 3 times the same quote. Interesting.
It is the same quote. This is page 41. And then Peter Block comes in and says, sorry for the repetition, but this may really be the point. Right?
I didn't notice that.
Yeah.
It's 3 times the same quote on the same page, one after another. Yeah.
Just for example, I'll even read the next paragraph. It's like every paragraph is something. According to this line of thinking, that our blame and judgment of others is merely a symptom, as are our feelings of vulnerability. A root cause of the blame, judgment, and complaining is our denial of our freedom. Like, oh, good Lord. We institutionally deny the fact that each of us, through our actions and our views of the world, is creating the organization and the leadership we are so fond of complaining about.
Beautiful. Leadership as a social process.
It's constructivist, deciding that.
The next one, I marked that. Yes, please read it.
So and this is again deciding that I have created the world around me, and this hits me personally as well as organizationally. You know that. Deciding that I have created the world around me, and therefore I am the one to fix it, is the ultimate act of accountability.
Another one of those great quotes from this book. It's just fabulous. I wrote on the page, great.
in black.
I couldn't write anything meaningful. Great.
Yeah,
but
couldn't have said it better myself.
Most managers see the cost of all the blaming and avoidance of responsibility, but their efforts to evoke more accountability tend to reinforce the cost and futility it breeds. We think we can bring accountability into being through rewards, enforcement, punishment, and even role modeling, which he criticizes ferociously, which is good. Which is why holacracy and sociocracy are bollocks, right? These strategies of role modeling, etc., increase the constraints on people as if accountability were an unnatural act that needed to be taught or induced. So it's another theory approach in practice to the over accentuation of roles as prescription, right? He distinguishes this very neatly here. That roles, of course, are natural, but roles as prescription, as much as feedback, prescribed feedback are evil.
But please continue, because you got to go right to the implications.
You mean the philosophical?
Yeah. Please.
Okay. The philosophic stance gives clues to an alternative strategy, one that confronts people with their freedom and treats accountability as an inherent quality that needs more understanding and tolerance than instruction or inducement. Beautiful.
Yep.
Just an amazing book.
Amazing book. It's full of all this stuff. I need to take some water. I need to breathe. And is there anything, we've really gone through a lot here. Is there anything else you wanted to bring forth about the book that
no,
you didn't get the chance to today?
Read it or shut the fuck up.
Read it, shut the fuck up. Or read it and and scream about it out loud as many
Exactly.
times
Please
as
do
you can.
so. Yes. This
All right.
was published by Wiley in 23. I think it costs like $25. So it's okay. It's buyable, I think. And yeah, read it.
Worth it, but worth
And
it at
if you
5 times
like,
the price.
copy write the quote you like most from this book below the video or wherever you are seeing this. So share it with others so that everybody can cherish in that.
Share it widely. Thank you for the precious gift of your time and the musicality of your play here in this space. And thank you out there in the Betaverse for the precious gift of your time and attention. And we will see you next time on BetaCodex Live.